very warm welcome to everybody who has gathered here today to attend this session on the return of the Taliban, and a very special welcome to Professor Hassan Abbas, who has come all the way from the United States, not just for us but for other purposes also. He is a distinguished professor at National Defense University in Washington, D.C. He has a very brilliant academic career and many books to his credit. He is an internationally acclaimed scholar and held in the highest esteem in academic circles. Professor Hassan Abbas he remained a senior advisor at the Belfast Center for Science and International Affairs at the Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University. He has a very close association with the Asia Society, and he was, above all, the distinguished Qaid-e-Azam Chair, professor at Columbia University before he joined CISA, and he has also previously held fellowships at Harvard Law School and Asia Society in New York. He is author of many books, but today we will be talking about mainly this book, The Return of the Taliban. He has a hands-on experience of research, and he has interviewed many people in connection with his work. I'm extremely grateful to him for finding the time. I know he doesn't have much time in Karachi, for finding the time to be with us today. And it is a pleasure to introduce him, and I request him to take the floor.
Bismillah. Thank you very much. I'm truly honored to be here, and also but glad I'm here, and look forward to interaction also, listening and learning from you as well. Only one thing I'll add in my bio, that with all these academic credentials, which I'm very proud of, I had begun my career as a police officer in Pakistan. So I was Assistant Superintendent of Police, served in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, then took leave, went to England, did my law, came back, worked in National Accountability Bureau. Some people in very high places I had a chance to interrogate in Attock Fort, but that is my old life. But that had a huge impact on my learning. If I was not a police officer, probably I would not have looked at security the way I ultimately did. And this is in United States, this is an extremely important context for educationists, because there's not a rift of sorts, but a combination between academics and politicians. I remember when I was at Harvard and President Obama became president, the whole gallery where offices of my professors was empty, because almost all of them, some leading folks, joined the government. So in US, if you are a professor one day, you can be a policymaker the other day. So that's in that world, my work both as an academic but also as a former practitioner had a huge impact, and it really helped me. Some people, now that I've whatever humble credentials I've acquired, I'm still a student in my own eyes, but whenever someone mentions my long credentials, some of my friends would say, "Can you, Hassan, we advise you to take off this reference to police in your life." And I said, "Why is that so?" And they said, "Because police has a terrible reputation. You're a professor." And I said, "No, I'm very proud of it, because I wore that uniform." And also, one more anecdotal one-liner, and then I'll come to the point, which is whenever I'm introduced, at times I'm introduced in US academia as, okay, this is journey from a cop to a professor. My wife often corrects them. She says, it's not from cop to a professor, it's from cop to a human being. So she had followed my career closely, and me as well. The focus today is, as you kindly mentioned, the return of the Taliban, and I'm truly honored to be here, because for a very long time I have followed the excellent work of this organization, and I heard the name of Dr. Saiba for a long time. Somehow, honestly, I really wanted at some time to contact and come, but it was her and the institution which approached me. What I plan to do is give you a quick glimpse of my theory on this subject. And then we can, with Q&A, I would know more about what you think and which aspects you would focus on. The only short relevant background here is, I had written another book on Taliban called The Taliban Revival, Violence and Extremism on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, Pakistan-Afghanistan frontier. That was published in 2014. It became a bestseller at that time, but the theory I had given in 2014 was that Taliban revival is taking place and they are going to come back. And many people ask me, how do you know? And I said, because at that time it was very obvious to me as a professor, and I was teaching security officials from Afghanistan also, from Pakistan, India, US, of course, those US forces officials who had gone there. And some trends were very clear, and that built the background of this book. The trends, the clear trends were, democracy cannot be enforced or planted from outside. However, you can create some grounds, some foundations. However, you cannot just one day say, I have $1 billion or $10 billion, or in this case, $3 trillion, and say that, okay, I am going to ensure that this landlocked country is going to become democratic. That's no way to do it. Secondly, I had reached that conclusion, which was reinforced now. It is the indigenous institutions and the local culture which matter the most. And I know I'm truly honored by my friends from Italy who are here and who's a great friend of Pakistan, but I'm about to say something on Italy, you'll forgive me, because I'm going to throw everyone under the bus, including my Pakistan and US, my both countries of love and origin, I truly say. The way it was done was, okay, we'll build a law enforcement police model. Let's give justice system to France, policing to Italy, defense to US. So there were 10 different nations who were trying to build, all with good intention. Let me say that to you. I don't buy that conspiracy theory that there was something inherently intended as bad. I think all these countries gave their taxpayers money. So the Afghan project was well intended. I would like to debate if someone disagrees. But the Italians were not talking to the French system was not working with the German system was not working with the Americans. Everyone, and they had divided it among ourselves. The British were given, okay, you stop the drug trafficking. And at the end of the day, we realized that the local people, the warlords, or those who had their homes in the west or east, somewhere out, and who were always being corrupt and sending money outside and giving wrong impression, that has created a space where, to me, in 2014, actually 2013, when I wrote the book, it was clearly going downhill. And so that's the background. Not that I had some other way to figure out, but the pattern was very clear. And last but not the least, and let me put it like that, it's a fact. Taliban had support from Pakistan. The Pakistani defense establishment was supporting them, and there were reasons for that. Pakistan has its own theory of doing that, which was very problematic, which we are now realizing that should not have been the case. And the theory is, as a political scientist, only those insurgencies succeed where there is, of course, local grievance, but there is some outside actor who's supporting that insurgency. None of the major global insurgencies, including the United States as a country, would not, which was started off as an insurgency against the British, who was supporting it, French, many others. Look at all major cases, whether they are freedom movements or elsewhere, there is some outside sanctuary space which is support from outside, whether for ideological reasons, political reasons, economic reasons. Taliban were getting, the lifeline for Taliban was from Pakistan. I'm not saying necessarily institutional. It was at times tribal. It was at times ethnic. It was at times people who were not in government, but who knew exactly how government works. There were people who had retired from security organizations. All who knew was, we had once upon a time supported the Afghan jihad. They had their excellent links. And they said, okay, we'll start our personal consultancy. and we'll pull this off. One example, you'll be surprised when, this is well known, when the most tragic attack, one of the most tragic attacks had happened in Pakistan's general military headquarters during Musharraf years, I'm sure you remember. How state tried to manage it? Well, a helicopter was brought in, let's get the head of the Jaish, Mohammed Masood Azhar, bring him to GHQ to negotiate with those people who had held some people hostage in the military headquarters, the most powerful nation. Who did it? The police chief of Punjab, who said, sir, we have tried to kill them. Of course, excellent military forces, special forces were there. They realized the militants who have hijacked all this or blackmailing right in the heart of Rawalpindi, someone needed to negotiate with them. They said, we know their friends who are outside. They can go and negotiate it. It worked only partly. The point I'm making is there are far more reasons for what happened, the Taliban empowerment. American mistakes, Western misplaced agenda, local corruption, and outside support. I'll be totally dishonest if I'll not say that Pakistan was not involved. This is the background, let's say. What happened? How the Taliban came back? Still, I remember I had talked to people and I had given, I told you where I was right, predicting it at least 7 years before. But I can tell you where I was wrong. I couldn't predict what happened within the 7 months. Long shot, I was accurate. 5 months before August 21, people asked, what do you think? What's going to happen? And all of us said, no way, Taliban can win. They have the South always in their hands because of the Pashtun connection, because of other ideological connections, because of support. They cannot enter Kabul. Why did I say that? Many of us, most of us thought, even if Taliban are very strong, there are Afghan security forces who are very strong. Afghan police. I trained some of the leading Afghan military leaders. I can tell you, very honest, upright, dedicated people. Not majority of them, many of them. No one was expecting that they will give up arms and not a single shot will be fired and Taliban will walk back into Kabul. I don't think anyone knew this. How did that happen? That's the big question, which we need to answer. Because most people, I've talked to not only Taliban, but some of the Afghan leaders now in Turkey, UAE, and when I go to these Afghan Republic folks who were cabinet ministers, many of them are now have run away and are in US policy world. I have not received a good answer to this question that how come Taliban walked into Kabul on August 15, 2021 without any obstacle, without anyone stopping them. The answer that I get from Afghans is, well, the Americans conspired, you guys talked to Taliban, you pulled it off, you told us not to fight. No one can tell Taliban, the honorable Pashtuns, not to fight. Would they have listened? There was something else that had happened. And that puzzle is still there. Why? I mean, I understand, even if there was a force, even someone convinced them, even if many Afghans had thought, Taliban are coming back and they are very powerful and they are militarily very strong and they are going to defeat us. Still, there were enough honorable, proud Pashtuns who would have thought, let me get killed because we stood for this new system. Why no one thought that they had enough investment in the system to stand, fight, and die for it? And that's where the Western world and the Eastern world need to think about why it was all money, tons of money, and it never convinced enough people to stand for whatever new system was. And the new system was very, very important. It was democratic in some sense. It was a new system was built of roads and highways and banking system. A new structure was built. I'll stop that thought there and mention to you, based on this, 3 or 4 elements, which I'll talk about and leave rest for Q&A. Number one, we need to understand, it's based on what the background I mentioned. To understand Taliban today, you'll have to understand the politics, culture, and religion of Taliban. You'll say, of course, the religion is very obvious, Islam. No, I doubt it. I made a different case. I seriously doubt what the new Taliban, the hardcore Taliban's religion, if it has anything to do with even Hanafi, Deobandi, Sunni school of thought, which they claim to be reflecting off. Ask any Deobandi and Hanafi school in Karachi. Some are they had their financial linkages with them, so they will not agree. But many others will tell you the form of Deobandism that now Taliban are claiming to believe in is very, very different. And there's a new category in academia in US and in West elsewhere. I'm saying US because that's where I live and study. This kind of the new age religion, which is a new cultural, these is age of new religions. Yes, the structure, the name may look like Islam, especially the Kandhari version. I know I'm about to say something very strong. I would make a claim. There are serious problems in the way Kandhari worldview, which have mixed tribalism, which has mixed their culture and added the title, oh, this is our Deobandi Islam. At least I get one nod from a very, very knowledgeable journalist, Ziaur Rahman, who I respect tremendously. I don't know, I've put you on the spot, but when you nodded, I thought, okay, you agree with me. So keep in view the idea of religion, culture, and politics. Politics, I mean, unlike general belief, Taliban are very, very political. And they are, it seems now, are very good at their politics. There is a severe cleavage, or there is, I should say, a severe schism between what Kandahar is. Kandahar is the heartland of Taliban. It is in the south, from where Taliban were originally born, for those who may not be aware of it. Kabul, of course, is the capital. The politics in Kabul today is very different from what's happening in Kandahar. Kabul has these new cabinet ministers which are quite pragmatic in many ways. I'll even go to an extent of saying there's one cabinet minister, very powerful. He was once upon a time on the terrorist hit list, still is actually, has been reaching out to some Western capitals saying, and I know for this firsthand almost, he's asking, can the Western countries train customs officials for Taliban? So they are very, from their point of view, they are trying to build their new institution. When he was asked, somebody interviewed Sirajuddin Haqqani for me for this book on epilogue. And when I asked my friend, can you ask him what is the biggest concern Sirajuddin Haqqani has? He's still on the FBI terrorist list. He said, he talked like a normal, ordinary politician would do. I would compare him with any Pakistani politician, not given all the extremism and terrorism he has been involved in. I'm talking about politics. He said, I'm concerned about 70,000 to 80,000 foot soldiers of Taliban who had fought for me. Now the Afghan security and police forces are there. Many of those who had run away are now back. They're all in they're back in the government. I have to take care of employment problem in Kabul. I have to recruit these 70 to 80,000 people because I can't find jobs for them. It's like an American talking in terms of economic job opportunities. So politics, don't underestimate, don't think, many people I talked to in West, they thought Taliban are these cavemen who have no modern ideas. You will be amazed at their discourse. That's they have learned through the process. That's why I say these words. One other frame that we need to keep in mind is, and what I call Taliban 3.0, which means Taliban 1.0. 1.0 was Mullah Omar. By the way, Mullah Omar, when he was the so-called Amir al-Momineen, I have serious issues with that. Amir al-Momineen is a very, very important word with a lot of Islamic history. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry cannot say I have become Amir al-Momineen. So I have issues with that. However, I'm saying it what he claims to be. When someone would walk up to Mullah Omar in 1990s and say, Imam or leader, for this policy I need $1 million or $1 million Afghani Rial or whatever, he would get up from his bed, he would drag a big box, wooden box from under his bed, open it, there was cash in it, there were jewelry in it. That was the Ministry of Finance under the bed of Mullah Omar. This is well reported. This is Ahmed Rashid's book on Taliban, the most famous one. Today, at least, you have a functional State Department, as a functional State Bank of Afghanistan. There is a banking system. But Taliban 1.0 was very rudimentary, very, very basic, very, very lack of resources and no communication network. That was Taliban 1.0. Taliban 2.0 is when US dislodged Taliban. Taliban were on the run. Some came to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border region. Others remained in the south, fought an insurgency, and created so much difficulty and hard times for the Western forces. Were they operating in the same fashion? No. Insurgencies run very differently than how you run whatever rudimentary form of social movement. Taliban were a social movement. Those who say that Pakistan had created Taliban, I have issues with that as well. I don't think Taliban were capable, Pakistan was capable of creating Taliban. Yes, they, through their mistakes, some policies, created this space, but Taliban was an indigenous social movement in many ways also in Afghanistan. Pakistan cannot be blamed for creating Taliban, which many people do in the West. Yes, Pakistan facilitated it as soon as Taliban movement was there. But in 2001 onwards, there's this new insurgent movement, which had learned its own dynamics. It was different. People were moving away, walking away from Afghanistan to UAE, to Qatar, many other countries. And when I asked them, let me first finish the Taliban 3.0. So Taliban 2.0 is just insurgent movement. They learned how to fight, how to create tremendous challenges for the West. West with all its military, with all its support base, with all its supporters who were getting a lot of money. Taliban 3.0 is Taliban today, the way they are handling their cabinet meetings, today they are handling their talking and engaging with the West. Completely different picture. And people are at a loss to understand, we thought these Taliban are the cavemen. How come they are negotiating, and after negotiation they become so organized? One example I'll give you. When the Taliban negotiations were happening between United States and Taliban, and I mentioned this in the book, twice when the final agreement was happening, and there was a draft agreement, what Taliban are saying, what US is saying, twice the American draft was corrected, the English language was corrected by the Taliban side. They put in comma, they did a correction of a spelling mistake. This is not cavemen you're talking about. Who are these Taliban? These Taliban, and I asked this to a very senior government Pakistani security official, an intelligence official, and I've mentioned all this. Some people blamed me, including Taliban, which I'll talk about, that I got some extraordinary links in intelligence on all sides. Yes, as I'm a teacher. I teach students, my students are intelligence officers also, from Pakistan, from US, from elsewhere. People talk to me. I have been very honest in giving my footnotes, talked in conversation with an intelligence officer. Some people told me that during those negotiations, one person said when we sat in those, and this is probably the first draft of history on what happened in those negotiations. When people were talking, one American general said to me, I was stunned, I was not expecting Taliban to talk in such an organized fashion that they would never contradict their leader. They were very well coordinated. And then I asked a Pakistani general, I quoted him, this is what an American general said to me. They were so organized. From where this new organization skill is coming? And the Pakistani general said to me, he said, he was being very kind, he said, sir, the problem is, the old Taliban 1.0, all they knew was how to go from Peshawar, from Kabul to Kandahar, maybe to Peshawar. The new generation of Taliban are living in Qatar, they are living in UAE, they are living in many Western countries, their kids are going, firsthand I can tell you, talking to a Taliban minister now, when I asked him, why are you not allowing girls to go to school? He said to me, Professor, two of my daughters are studying. One of my daughters is doing masters. My other daughter, he is a sitting cabinet minister today in Kabul. He said, my other daughter wants to do PhD. Do you think I'm against women education? I said, so why are you feeling? What is the crime of the girls in Afghanistan? He said, well, that is that is Kandahar, that is our ideological masters. The point I'm making is, this Taliban 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 has to be understood. And there are other changes. Mullah Omar and Mullah Hibatullah, the current leader, they are very religious in their orientation. Mullah Omar had no religious credentials in terms of his going to a madrasa. He was a normal, ordinary, lower-level fighter, but charismatic, smart, bold. One of his boldness I can explain to you. I know I'm a professor, I can go on and on. Tell me how much more time I have now. 10 minutes is good. He said that Mullah Omar's claim to fame, how Mullah Omar became the leader, was when he walked to this famous mosque in Kandahar, where they have what we call Moy Rasul Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the hair of the Prophet, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he said King Zahir had walked into that room to get the hair and a cloak. I should have mentioned cloak as well. The cloak of Prophet, what they claim to have, the cloak of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And there was another ruler who tried. Zahir Shah went and started trembling, couldn't touch it. No other ruler ever could go. They could never even look at it because it was in 3 boxes. Mullah Omar just went in, opened the 3 boxes, took the cloak out, wore it, went on top of a roof and said, I am Amir al-Mu'mineen. And everyone said, wow, he's wearing the cloak of the Prophet. He must be very special. That's the way he got his real credibility. Mullah Hibatullah was running a madrasa near Quetta for a very long time. All his family relationships, everything is in Quetta. And he has much more exposure. These leaders are different, but in between them, there was a third leader, Mullah Mansur Akhtar. Mullah Mansur Akhtar used to go to Dubai, and this is why Taliban really gave a strong statement against me. He used to go there, he used to drink, he used to do other things which I don't want to mention, but you can read. He used to go to prostitution houses, known to go to for Russian girls, and it's well known. And
Russian women are very.
They are but that's no credit to Mullah Mansur Akhtar, or I'm not going to give him a pass just because of that. So Mullah Mansur Akhtar would drink, and I asked them, so what was his special relationship with Dubai or elsewhere that he was getting all this? He was going from Quetta, flying there. He's the same Mullah Mansur Akhtar who was killed in a drone strike near Quetta, you remember. And someone said to me, because in the first Taliban 1.0, he was the aviation minister. Is there an air force or planes flying out of Kabul? No. There were only planes of special royal family members from Gulf who would go for hunting. And he made good friendships with them. And once the Taliban are over, he had those relationships. They said, welcome back to you. Ultimately, US wanted him. An FBI plane was standing in Dubai. UAE was asked to hand him over. They said he has already left for Iran. US said, okay, you have fighter aircraft, send it to Iran and get him back. They said, sorry, we can't get it. US and Pakistan started watching him. Pakistan was also worried. Why is he going to Iran? Mullah Mansur Akhtar. Now, another major puzzle. Taliban, who had gone almost to war with Iran, Mullah Mansur Akhtar moved his family to Iran. And he was coming back, and there was intelligence he was hit by a drone strike. What I'm saying is, our general perceptions and the way you want to frame Taliban, it's not like that. 3 points. Today's Taliban are showing their classic maneuvers in how to deal regionally. They're getting free electricity from Uzbekistan. They're talking to Turkmenistan. When I interviewed people in Turkmenistan and exactly to be specific in Uzbekistan, they said, we are scared of Talibanization in our country. We want to talk to them. Taliban, people like me and many other scholars, I think all leading Pakistani scholars of extremism were saying to Pakistan, for God's sake, don't support Taliban, because Taliban and TTP are 2 sides of the same coin. But Pakistani state said, no, Pakistani Taliban are terrorists. They are the other Taliban. What was the phrase used for that? Good Taliban, bad Taliban. And we were saying, no, this is only one kind of Taliban. And we were told, no, they are bad Taliban. Now we are realizing, now Pakistan is realizing, TTP is different because, and TTP is also another side of the Afghan Taliban, because the Afghan Taliban, why are the Afghan Taliban not actually giving the Pakistani Taliban to Pakistan? Answer is simple. Afghan Taliban know that even now, US can go back to them if, God forbid, there is a terrorist attack. Previously they were in mountains. Now exactly people know where Afghan Taliban, where the ministry is, where is Mr. X and Mr. Y and Mr. Z. I'm not recommending that to happen. They can be taken out in a one-day drone strikes. That will be a bad policy. That I'm not supporting that. What I'm saying it, Afghan Taliban know they're exposed now. If something happens, where will Afghan Taliban go? They'll go back to the mountains. Anyone who has read any history book on the region would know. They always go back to the mountains. In mountains, they know the ways of the mountains better than anyone else. They will again need to have sanctuary in Pakistan-Afghanistan border region. Who has control over the Pakistan-Afghanistan border region? Some of the tribes, I'll not mention Waziris or Masouds, not all, some of them, who also give most of the people in TTP. Letting go of TTP at this time means they will have no backup plan in case US goes against Afghan Taliban again. Why would they give you their support base? They will not. That's their constituency. The bigger challenge is ISK, Islamic State of Khorasan, because that is the ISK. Let me put it like that in my last hardly 5 minutes or so. ISK is the new Taliban, Islamic State of Khorasan. Islamic State of Khorasan is the biggest ideological challenge to Taliban. You might have seen there's a, I'll not mention, a top leader in Karachi actually, who were among the first ones to challenge Afghan Taliban. They threatened Afghan Taliban. Why? The leader in Karachi said the Afghan Taliban have started attacking the Ahl Hadith school, because those Ahl Hadith schools have great links with madrasas and some madrasas in Karachi. And they were not expecting Taliban, a Deobandi Hanafi Sunni group, to challenge the Ahl Hadith group. Because the Ahl Hadith group was, some of the madrasas in Afghanistan were the ones from where some of the recruits of Islamic State of Khorasan was coming. So there's that very confusing dynamic. Let me put it in one sentence. Islamic State of Khorasan or Daesh wants a global empire. Taliban are too focused in their own land. Have Taliban changed? Many people ask. In some ways, no. When it comes to women, girls, I understand. I've been told by so many people, at least 3 or 4 cabinet ministers of Taliban, others, we want girls to go to school. Many of my friends who follow from Pakistani experts who say Afghan Taliban, 80% of them wants girls to go to school. Well, I trust you, but I'm not going to buy it. If 80% of Taliban want girls and women to go to school, why is that not happening? Which means their strong ideological masters in Kandahar have the final say. In some ways, Taliban are changing. In my book, there's a picture of the famous Sufi shrine, Sakhi shrine, in Kabul. Taliban used to attack it with suicide bombers. Now they are supporting it. If you remember, on August 15, 2021, that was very close to Ashura. Taliban allowed the Shia Muslims in Afghanistan to go out and accept 1 or 2 practices. They said, we are fine. One of my friends who went there, they said, Kabul was full of black flags during Ashura. My Shia friends called me when I wrote this from Afghanistan and said, the Afghan Taliban are so smart, they're doing this in Kabul and other areas, but they're pushing out Hazaras from the areas of their strength. They're changing the actual dynamic. So they're a mixed bag. At the end of the day, in 2 minutes I have to conclude. 1 minute. Taliban there's less corruption, there's less security threat, no doubt about it. Taliban are benefiting from the structure that Americans and Westerners built. There's a new state institutions, banking system. So American or Western investment is not gone to zero. It's the new infrastructure. Taliban are forced to adapt to it. My suggestion, recommendation to everyone, including Pakistan, US, for God's sake, engage with them. You tried with $1 trillion, you couldn't defeat them. Extremism is still there. For Pakistan also, if they're not listening to you on Taliban, there is no other way but dialogue and engagement. That's the only way to come to an adjustment with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan Abbas. And I now open the floor to questions. Please keep your questions and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Safa. I'm a recent U of T grad, and I've been reading this book, World Order by Henry Kissinger, lately. In this book, he predicts that following the American withdrawal from Afghanistan, the nation will revert to its original state as a confederation of semi autonomous feudal regions that prevail on an ethnic basis. Now, Afghanistan hasn't really been a conventional state. It's been very traditional. They focus on their loya jirgas. So, how will the Afghan Taliban consolidate a government where they are widely accepted and where their sovereignty is respected internationally and within their own country?
Very good question. Taliban among themselves have huge differences, but they are pulling themselves together at this time because they know that their only survival is in unity. However, this idea of confederation is hard to implement because at this time Taliban have recruited people in all other ethnicities as well. So Taliban is no more a Pashtun phenomenon. I think it never was in real sense of the word. Pakistan is kind of have been avoiding this, but there are Punjabi Taliban also who are actually more deadly than the Afghan Taliban in my view. But that's for another day. The confederation idea in terms of that they'll go back to their old model, at this time it seems actually Taliban are going to do quite well in terms of expanding their space everywhere. I remember when I had moved to US 24 years ago in 2001, one of my professors, when I made a presentation in Afghanistan, he said something which still is vivid in my mind. He said, Afghanistan is not a place, it is a space. By that he meant was different ethnicities group operate. But if it becomes a confederation, in this region, look at the map, Pakistan is based on 4 nationalities, Indian so many nationalities. If that thing happens, the Pandora box will open. Because currently Central Asians are very worried. Tajiks, there's so many Tajiks, Uzbeks in Afghanistan, they are not going to allow, that's their biggest worry. Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turkmans, the biggest worry is what if Afghanistan is disintegrated, then if they are responsible for their Uzbek population or that area where they are more, from their point of view, Taliban-oriented people, they will not work well with the Russian-trained that region. So yes, it is in a form which is collapsing because, don't get me wrong, Afghanistan is in a terrible economic situation. Their currently revenue generation, which is good by their standards, is about $3 billion. They need $10 billion. They're $7 billion short. So economic crisis is leading to a humanitarian crisis as well. It is leading to an environmental crisis as well. If there's a question, we can talk on that. But I don't buy the idea which you quoted. I think it's someone must have written this piece for him. He has never been to these. There's no shortage in the West. And I'm not saying as an Eastern, I am equally part of the Western academic tradition, but there are so many armchair scholars who, as big they are, have access to so many experts who do work for them, and they come up with such theories. If I heard it right, I think that I doubt that's going to happen.
Sure.
Yes, my name is Arshad Rahim. I'm a business person in the healthcare space. Mine is a simple question. I mean, you said that Pakistan and the West need to engage with the Taliban. And for political objectives as well as economic objectives, both sides have to come together, which means Afghani and Pakistan and the West. Do you, in your worldview, see this happening?
I see, sir, some signs of it. For example, currently Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan are, because they are worried about Talibanization, they're giving them free electricity. Even though there's a big problem that of Taliban are digging a new canal. It's a 115-mile long, 100 meters deep canal, which is taking water from Amu Darya. Amu Darya takes care of 80% of water in Central Asia. Taliban, what they are doing is really annoying Iran. Iran is, by the way, helping Taliban, but Iran is very annoyed. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan are very, very annoyed. but still they are talking to them. I think if anyone is ahead in the game in terms of seeing what to do, it is Iran and Central Asia. They realize they have to engage with them. So engagement is happening. I have seen pictures in my book also. There are the foreign minister of Taliban sitting with JP Singh, my friend from India, joint secretary, but who manages India's South Asia policy. And JP Singh was sitting there. The Pakistani foreign minister was going there. They are Europeans with UN. Taliban are engaging, talking to them. This is very new for them. So there is more engagement experience. US is also talking to them. Remember, there is a negotiated deal which allowed Taliban to go back. Without American negotiated deal with them, there was no way. In fact, those people, my own question initially, which I asked, why no one stood against Taliban? When I asked my friends there, they said Americans had a deal with Taliban. Taliban were empowered. They had their own smart strategy from their point of view, cutting deals with tribal leaders. They knew how to negotiate their way into Kabul. And that's how they came back. And at this time, there's US support for humanitarian aid indirectly. No one can say it publicly because it can be politically devastating in an election year. President Biden and others want to stay away from this. We'll see what happens in American elections. We can talk about it. But I think there is always, this is public knowledge, and I've said it in the book, there is some intelligence sharing happening because West is really concerned about Daesh. They want to give some intelligence to Taliban so that Daesh or ISK, Islamic State of Khorasan, is defeated. Currently, there is a battle between Qatar and UAE and Turkey. Who will get the rights for running Kabul airport? In fact, many countries in the region are all talking to Afghanistan, but for their own economic, political benefits. This is an unrelated thing, but I'll just mention one line about engagement. I think if all the regional countries, Central Asians, Pakistan, India, Turkey especially, UAE, Gulf, they're all leaders go to Taliban today and say to them, we are all together giving you one message. Girls will have to go to school. If they don't go to school, all of us will switch off. Taliban will accept. The problem is engagement. Each country is pushing its own agenda rather than a coordinated agenda. Sir.
Thank you, Professor, for your lecture, and thank you to Dr. Masuma to make available this great lecture to us. It's very interesting. I have two questions for you. They're both very difficult. So the first question is, how do you think, how really united the Taliban are? Because it is commonly assumed that Taliban are divided in three groups. However, some of the scholars I've read, they challenge this assumption and they say, no, the Taliban, it's wrong to divide them in three groups. In fact, they really are only one group. The second question is related to a very practical matter. So a lot of people have come across, and I mean, one of the reasons why they say, you know, they actually better with the current administration is because of the issue of corruption. So they say that corruption has actually lessened during the Taliban era. Now, there is a book I was reading, I think it's from a Tajik scholar, who's currently working in Europe. I don't remember the name, but basically it was a book about network of influences and how Afghan society works. So it was linked corruption to this network of influences. In fact, he didn't like the word warlord in the sense that he was assuming, you know, it's not like a warlord things, it's like a powerful person who is a patron to some clients. So he was seeing things in that perspective of network of influences. How have the Taliban been able to weaken this corruption, and so, you know, to be more to create in this sense also an environment which may be more business friendly from this perspective? Thank you.
Three excellent questions. The last one on corruption is, I think, a very important one, because we are hearing from almost everyone that the corruption has really gone down. Partly one, because of scare, because the rule of law system is different under Taliban. If they'll come to know somebody is really violating, they really go after them. That is one factor apparently for the time being. Secondly, there's less money, so there's less money to be bribed. One of my friends who visited Afghanistan for actually distribution of charity, he said that from the airport onwards, there are so many checks that on each point, when somebody was stopping him at a checkpost, there were two other people who were watching him, because there are not many jobs. So the government positions which can be corrupted, they have so many other people surveilling them from within Taliban. So there's a check and accountability system. That's why the corruption system is lessened. Mind you, the third thing, the corruption was happening when there was a lot of flow of international currencies. Taliban, in fact, were also benefiting from this. Many of the telecommunication companies, others, Western companies, during 2015, 16, 17, 18, were giving money to Taliban, please secure, don't attack our pole. Many Western companies, this came in the media also, which companies, I don't want to name them, were Western companies. This was happening. So there's that angle. And at this moment, perhaps those who are at the helm of affairs have a lot of money. So apparently, actually, one of my friends recently mentioned that the strange, interesting thing is, very interesting actually, that the cabinet members are getting different salary packages. Mullah Yaqub and Haqqani get higher salary because they say, we are very famous, we have big network, the people come for tea all the time. So we need more money for entertaining people. Others said, you are not known, there are not many guests in network, we are not going to give you a high salary. So they have figured out some way. So this is what rumors and information we are getting at this time. On your question on United Taliban, I think that's $1 million question, or $1 billion if I could say that. Because clearly, Mullah Hibatullah sitting in Kandahar is very powerful. He has expanded his support base. Some people say 2 or 3 people closest to him are very ideological. He has a safe house of sorts close by, where some of the local mullahs are coming. His constituency is local imams or mullahs in the south. And he's doing these extreme notions, girls will not go to school, we will do this and that, which is very, very ideological, hard line, because he's catering to those who are very extremist in their worldview. Whereas those ministers in Kabul, although Haqqanis are from the east also, they are relatively more pragmatic, because they are engaging with the West. And debate is happening between Kandahar and Kabul on how to engage with West. Mullah Hibatullah's speeches, he has made 3 big speeches. Any one of you, especially students, young people who are studying Taliban, if you are just reading Pakistani newspapers, you will not figure out what's happening. Read speeches of Mullah Hibatullah, 3 speeches, what he has said in those speeches. Some are translated in YouTube also. This is extremely important to see what they are saying. Another person, for example, in Division Wise, the person who's the biggest bigot or extremist of Mullah Umar's cabinet, who's actually stays all the time with him in Kandahar, is a Pakistani who used to be in Madrasa Haqqaniya. Madrasa Haqqaniya was not happy with him. Some of the fatwas against the Shia Muslims came from him. The biggest supporter of sectarianism in Pakistan, who speaks good Urdu, he is now a cabinet minister in Kabul, but he is closest to Mullah Hibatullah. So there's division between that kind of group. I've mentioned his name in the book and all that. I'm saying all this, it gives the impression I want all of you to buy my book. That's not the intention. I'm saying read the book. I'm not getting any money out of the book. I hope somebody publishes it locally. The point is that division, as you have rightly mentioned, is huge. However, they know that we are not going to survive if there's division. Even one story that I heard is that Mullah Hibatullah used to say, whenever people will come to him with many complaints, a cabinet minister told me indirectly. He said, Hibatullah used to say, okay, you guys are not happy with what I'm doing, I'm leaving. I don't want to be to be Amir al-Mominin anymore. So some cabinet ministers said, well, he's not actually listening to us at all. Let's some of us go to him together. As soon as he will say, you see, I'm not interested in being Amir al-Mominin, we'll say, okay, that's fine. Let's have election. In the Shura, we'll have another one. So they went to Kabul, went to Kandahar with this intention. And Mullah Hibatullah by now has built his extensive intelligence network. Each ministry has his spy there as well. Hibatullah came to know about it. The team came. He said, all right. And he said, okay, I'm not going to meet this as a group because you have different requirements and complaints about ministries. I'm going to meet each of you singly, one by one. And the whole point fizzled out. So they are divisions, but they know that it's not going to be an internal coup, because then it's all open for everyone who can. So Hibatullah is far more stronger. The divisions are still there. Mullah Yaqub thinks he needs to be the next king because his father was a king once. Haqqani thinks he's the most capable, competent person who has all the links. And think of his engagement. He went to UAE, he went for Hajj. How could he go for Hajj and get on the plane with all these sanctions on him? Somebody nodded, probably. Thank you.
Abbas, thank you very much for the very good lecture.
Sir.
If you allow me, can I speak in Urdu?
जी बिस्मिल्लाह.
मैं अर्ज़ ये कर रहा हूँ कि मुल्ला हिबतुल्लाह की आपने जिक्र किया. देखिए टीपीपी ने बाकायदा बैत की है मुल्ला हिबतुल्लाह से और ये कहा है कि विल फाइट अगेंस्ट पाकिस्तान. तो मैं ये कर रहा हूँ कि आप पास इतनी माशाल्लाह नॉलेज है और आपका इतना बड़ा नाम है आलमी सतह पे भी, पाकिस्तान में भी, तो क्या आप इस पर अपनी रोशनी डालेंगे?
देखिए, आप बिल्कुल सही फरमा रहे हैं. ये बात जब पाकिस्तानी तालिबान पाकिस्तान में दहशतगर्दी कर रहे थे और उस वक्त अफगान तालिबान को यहाँ पे सर का ताज बनाया गया था. मेरे पास और कोई लफ्ज़ नहीं है मेरी पॉलिसी बयान करने के लिए. बड़े लोग नाराज़ होंगे, माजरत है उनसे जो नाराज़ हों. जब हमने उनको अफगान तालिबान को पाकिस्तान ने सर का ताज बनाया, और ये बात सबको पता थी कि जो पाकिस्तानी तालिबान थे, इनके जो लेटर हेड्स थे जिस पे थ्रेट्स लिख के भेजते थे, जो पाकिस्तानी पुलिस अफसरान आपको बता सकते हैं. और ये मेरे पाकिस्तानी पुलिस के, मैं पुलिस सर्विस में था तो पुराने दोस्तों से बातचीत रहती है, खासकर इस फील्ड में. वो दिखाते थे कि देखें, ये एक तरफ उन्होंने हिबतुल्लाह का नाम, एक तरफ उन्होंने अपने अमीर का नाम लिखा है, मसूद का या जो भी था, या बैतुल्लाह का, सबका. दूसरी तरफ तो लिखते हैं अमीर अल मोमिनीन फलां फलां. ये बात पता थी हमें. अब ये फ़र्क पड़ा है कि पाकिस्तान ने बहुत प्रेशर डाला है, और मुझे समझ आती है वजह प्रेशर डाला है उनके ऊपर कि जनाब, ये अगर हमने आपकी सारी उम्र मदद की, हमारे बगैर आप जिंदा नहीं रह सकते थे, आज आप कुछ शर्म और हया करें और हमारे ये पाकिस्तानी तालिबान को हमारे हवाले करें. अब मुल्ला हिबतुल्लाह से इन्होंने एक बयान दिलवाया है, और जो मुल्ला याकूब ने ऑफिशियली कहा भी है कि किसी हमारे अंदर के लोग अगर किसी बाहर के मुल्क में जाकर जिहाद करेंगे तो वो जिहाद नहीं होगा. कुछ वो कोशिश नैरेटिव की चेंज कर रहे हैं. पाकिस्तान ने इनको बड़ा प्रेशराइज किया. पीछे दिन एक सीनियर बंदा उनका मारा भी है. अफगान तालिबान ने पाकिस्तान को ये कहा कि आप ये कीजिए कि हम आपका मसला हल कर देते हैं, हम इनको शिफ्ट करते हैं. बड़ी उनकी ज़रा अब स्मार्टनेस या क्लेवरनेस देखें. अफगान तालिबान को जो पाकिस्तान के टॉप वजीर जाते हैं, इनकी तस्वीरें, इनको ये कहा, मैंने इन्हीं से सुना है. मैं तो एज एन एकेडमिक जो अंदर की कहानी भी सुनूं, आई ओ इट टू माई एकेडमिक वर्क. अफगान तालिबान ने कहा कि हम इनको नॉर्थ में शिफ्ट करेंगे, आपका मसला नहीं रहेगा, ना ये पाकिस्तान के बॉर्डर पे होंगे डीटीपी, ना ये पाकिस्तान पे हमला कर सकेंगे, इतने दूर से कहाँ से आएंगे. पाकिस्तान ने कहा ठीक है, ओके, वी आर फाइन विद इट. उन्होंने कहा ये इतने $1 बिलियन का खर्चा है उनको वहाँ ले जाने के लिए. तो पाकिस्तान ने कहा हम तो ये तो नहीं कर सकते, हमने पहले आपको जो इतने पैसे दिए, इतने खाना, अभी आपके घर भी हैं पेशावर में भी, कोयटा में भी. तो ये कांस्टेंट स्ट्रगल चल रही है. पाकिस्तान के जो तमाम सिक्योरिटी के इदारे हैं, इनको ये समझना होगा कि अपने अंदर खुद ही रिसर्च करने, थोड़ी बाहर वाले को ना दें, मुझे ना दें, किसी और को इन्फॉर्मेशन ना दें, खुद बैठ के पिछला पढ़ लें कि किस वक्त क्या पॉलिसी थी, उसका क्या असर हुआ, ताकि आगे गलती ना हो. सब कौमें गलतियां करती हैं, सीखती हैं, कोई खारिज नहीं है गलती मानने पे. ये पाकिस्तानी तालिबान का वजूद भी ना होता अगर ये माना गया होता. और अफगान तालिबान ने ये क्यों आइडिया दिया कि उनको नॉर्थ में ले जाते हैं, क्योंकि नॉर्थ में वो ताजिक और उज़्बेक्स को कम करके पश्तूनों को ज़्यादा करना चाहते हैं. तो ये बड़ी अजीब खेल है जो खेला जा रहा है. और ये मैं आपको आखिरी जुमला कहता हूँ, मैं पाकिस्तान जो पुलिस के मेरे दोस्त हैं पेशावर में वहाँ बात करता हूँ. मैं आपको इसलिए नहीं कह रहा कि आपको मैं जानता हूँ और आपकी आवाज़ से मैं बहुत मुतारिफ हूँ और आपकी शानदार जर्नलिज्म कैरियर से मैं बहुत अच्छी मिला कभी नहीं, लेकिन मैं आपको जानता हूँ कि पाकिस्तान के इस वक्त, मैं आपको एग्जैक्ट एक वाक़या बताता हूँ. 4 सद्दा में, अब ये सेंसिटिव बात हो जाएगी, जो साहसदारों के कोई बंदे आए उनसे, वो उनके लिए दैट्स फाइन. अहम एक शख्सियत हैं, वो फौजियों से बहुत करीब भी हैं, समझे, उनका हिस्सा भी शायद हो. 4 सद्दा में उनकी प्रॉपर्टी थी, वो प्रॉपर्टी बड़े अच्छे एरिया में आ गई, उसकी कीमत बहुत बढ़ गई. उन्होंने वो ज़मीन बेची, उनका लेजिटिमेट राइट था. पाकिस्तान में पाकिस्तानी तालिबान ने उनको चारसद्दा में फ़ोन किया कि जनाब वी नो अबाउट योर बैंक ट्रांजैक्शन, यू सोल्ड दिस मच प्रॉपर्टी, ये 10% हमारा उसमें ज़कात है, वो हमें दे दें। उन्होंने कहा नहीं, मैं तो फलां फलां हूँ, फलां फलां का भाई हूँ, फलां फलां ख़ानदान से हूँ, तुम्हारी क्या ज़रूरत कि तुम मुझसे मांगो। जब मसला इतना बड़ा बना कि उनको अहम जगहों से इस्लामाबाद में कहा गया कि हम गारंटी नहीं कर सकते, इनको पैसे दे दें। अफगान तालिबान ने उनकी जो एक्सटेंशन है पाकिस्तानी तालिबान, वो ब्लैकमेल कर रहे हैं लोगों को, किडनैपिंग कर रहे हैं। मुझे एक सीनियर तरीन अफसर ने पेशावर में कहा कुछ अर्से पहले हमें पता था जब when a kidnapping would take happen, we would know which telephone to call in somewhere and say give us back, negotiate, we'll give this much money. उन्होंने कहा ये तालिबान की नई पाकिस्तानी तालिबान की नई लीडरशिप आई है जिनके ना टेलीफोन नंबर हमारे पास है ना हम इनको जानते हैं। ये बहुत बड़ी वबा की सूरत में खैबर पख्तूनख्वा में मुसीबत खड़ी कर रहे हैं। और तो ये पाकिस्तान को अपनी पॉलिसी पे, अल्लाह करे पाकिस्तान कामयाब हो और पाकिस्तान की फ़ौज जो लोग रोज़ाना शहीद हो रहे हैं, जहाँ मैंने क्रिटिसाइज़ किया है वहाँ फ़ौज आपकी फ्रंट लाइन पे खड़ी हुई शहादतें दे रही है, पुलिस रोज़ाना शहादतें दे रही है, लेकिन किसी को देखना होगा कि ये दोबारा इतने पावरफुल कैसे हो गए कि हमें अपने जवानों का खून देना पड़ रहा है रोज़ाना।
Thank you very much, sir, for being here. I'm Sana Khan, and I teach law at Karachi University. Well, sir, my question is that there is an academic discussion into all scholars, that is the third world approaches to international law, that the relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan are bad because of the international law. Because international law has a new colonial understanding, and obviously there's an issue of geography and the colonial cartography. So, how do you see that thing when we are engaging with Taliban 3.0? So how to engage with this 3.0? Can we use international law? Is it beneficial for us? Because there's a doctrine of void Posititis which says that thing that US possess. And we know that the Durand line is a disputed border basically. So how to renegotiate those border areas in the light of prevailing in changing international law or the evolving international law? Thank you.
Excellent, beta. I'm so happy to hear this question because you get the theory right and you have framed it very well. Shabash. The challenge is that it's this moment, no one is recognized Afghanistan as a legitimate government. So the question of international law in that sense is a very problematic one because basically we are not, and this is strange. It's a very perplexing thing. Everyone is talking to them. Westerners, Easterners, everyone is talking to them while not recognizing them as a legitimate government in Afghanistan. And often I say we are behaving with Taliban on a side note. To be fair to Taliban for a second, because we have to be fair with even if you consider someone your enemy. Taliban are not the first one to build their system on authoritarianism and monarchy. They are far worse governments. They have a lot of money, so no one challenges them. They are also very authoritarian, extremist. There's a country X, Saudi Arabia, women could not drive just a few years ago. I had never seen this kind of campaign against them that is now happening. On the international law issue, on the border issue especially, it's a very interesting thing. When I asked somebody in Pakistan Foreign Office, is this Durand line question coming up again and again? They gave me a very interesting answer. They said actually this question is not coming up. Taliban are not talking about the Durand line. They are talking a lot about the containers which are stuck in Karachi, which have smuggled goods which have nothing to do in Afghanistan, but these are managed by the top cabinet members in Kabul. They have their lot of share. It has products like they're mentioning all the cosmetics which are not used in Afghanistan, and they're always asking Pakistani top politicians, we want our containers out because there's a big cut. So there's a very interesting, and there's a cut that happens in customs here as well. The Pakistani corrupt mafia takes money here. Somebody takes it in Islamabad, I bet. Somebody takes it in Peshawar, someone takes in Kabul. It is that economy, corruption, that network of drug smuggling, human trafficking, which is happening, but international law, no one is pushed about because it doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't suit anyone to talk about international law.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। शुक्रिया सर।
शुक्रिया साहब।
शमसुद्दीन मेरा नाम है। सर मेरा दो सवाल है। एक तो ये कि टीटीपी और अफ़गान तालिबान में जो फ़र्क हमारे यहाँ किया जाता रहा 2011-12 से, और मीडिया पे बहुत ज़्यादा कन्फ्यूजन फैलाई गई और ऐसा लगता था जैसे रियासत जानबूझ के ये काम कर रही है इसको ईंधन बनाने के लिए, पैसा कमाने के लिए। और कभी बताया गया कि ये रा के एजेंट है, कभी कुछ, लेकिन अब सब पे वाज़ी हो गया कि ऐसा नहीं था। तो इसकी क्या आप ये समझते हैं कि वाकई ये कन्फ्यूजन फैलाई गई ताकतवर हल्कों की तरफ से? और दूसरा जो आपने इरशाद फरमाया कि
दोबारा कहिए, क्या कन्फ्यूजन फैलाई?
कन्फ्यूजन ये फैलाई गई कि अफ़गान तालिबान और टीटीपी ये दो बिल्कुल अलग अलग वो है, और ये टीटीपी जो है ये रा के उस पर आके उनके अलाइकार बन के पाकिस्तान में धमाके करते ना, ये बहुत ज़्यादा मीडिया पे बात होती रही है। और दूसरा ये कि आपने ये फरमाया कि मुज़ाकरात वगैरह से इनको इंगेज करके हल किया जाए। तो 2013 में 3 रुकनी जो उन्होंने ख़ुद बंदे बनाए थे, समीउल हक साहब, इमरान खान साहब और मेरा ख्याल से हमीद गुल, और उसके बाद मुसलसल होता रहा। अभी 2021-22 में मुज़ाकरात हुए, लेकिन इसका तो कोई नतीजा नहीं निकल रहा। तो इसकी क्या वजह है सर?
जी, on the question of why was this difference between Afghan Taliban and Pakistani Taliban, was it choreographed? Because people would say, yes, Pakistani Taliban were raw agents. Pakistani Taliban were not raw agents. Pakistani Taliban were agents of their own agency of extremism, which is a product of the Afghan Jihad and General Ziaul Haq's policies and the extremism and sectarianism that Pakistan has allowed to fester and become a dominant factor. However, you cannot rule out support for TTP from outside as well. It's not that I'm trying to avoid India. I'm saying it can be other countries also, other than India. However, the outside support was not creating the TTP. TTP became a power to be reckoned with in a negative sense because of the own local dynamics. But they were getting some support potentially from outside as well to facilitate that. Why this was not realized, that Afghan Taliban and Pakistani Taliban are two sides of the same coin, because it never suited Pakistani state policy. They wanted to talk to Afghan Taliban. They were friends with them. They wanted to be friends with Afghan Taliban because they wanted to create challenges for Indians who were operating from Afghanistan. This is a fact. India supported some of the Baloch insurgency while they had the space in Kabul. That is, I think, a fact. This is now corroborated by evidence. However, TTP is a bigger phenomenon, unfortunately. They can be used and misused by somebody from outside. Pakistan was in denial. Pakistan, because of a policy shift that we want Afghan Taliban to be friends with us, to push back Indian influence in Afghanistan, they said TTP is there, in a sense, easy to tackle with because TTP is attacking Pakistan. Pakistani position was the Afghan Taliban are not attacking us. Why should we go after them? So I think it was partly denial, partly a reflection of their own narrative. Pakistan for some time became a victim of their own narrative. That's how I would put it. And negotiations, I mentioned in the epilogue here as well, when Siraj Haqqani was asked, why are you are a friend of Pakistan, you owe the most to Pakistan, why are you not helping TTP, you are not helping Pakistan dealing with TTP? Even he says, let's have negotiations with them. Pakistan tried, under former Prime Minister Imran Khan, negotiated deal with them, which was done by the former intelligence chief. I'm not naming him because now it is fashionable to name him. I have named him when it was not fashionable to name him. He is to be held responsible for a lot, because on the instructions of the former Prime Minister, probably he had no idea it was intelligence agencies at that time who briefed him that we need to bring some people back. And their argument was, we'll bring them back, they are coming back unarmed. Well, is the Pakistan a country where it's hard to get a weapon? Somebody will get unarmed, in 24 hours they'll get the best weapons. It was a very strange argument they gave. 2013 negotiations were different, we can talk more about that as well. But your point is valid. You are saying negotiation with TTP has not worked before. If I got it, Shri Saab, why will it work now? Now they're in power. Now they are very strong. You cannot fight them. You'll continue to lose. Negotiations give you an insight to the other side as well. Purely, I'm wearing my hat as a former police officer. It helps you understand the enemy as well. Negotiations are useful.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for endorsing my submission to be the part of this QA from Excellency Professor. This is Sarfraz Korejo, member of this institute, and from Shah Abdul Latif University, Khairpur. Sir, very enlightening episodes, 3 episodes regarding 1.0 Taliban, 2.0 and 3.0, especially all for the Afghan Talibans. If we go in the history, right from the holy warriors, jihadis, now the bad Talibans and good Talibans. So my question is in that episode and a corridor, I would say academic corridor, you mentioned about the Kandahar, Kabul and Karachi. What is the next? To this, I have the memory when I was visiting the New York University, one of the professor, Dean Sirisi Savant, he was leading students from that university on the project Comparative Religion of the sect, Deoband School of Thought and Brailwi School of Thought. So when the student, along with the professor Sirisi Savant, they read in the Deoband, at the greeting, the principal or the head of the Deoband Madrasa, he greeted, welcome the Talibans and the Talbat of New York. So the student, especially from the West, they were very much worried that we are being introduced as the Taliban. Then he explained that the real meaning of Taliban or Talbat is the seeker of knowledge. So my question is that don't we think that we from the Muslim or the Islamic countries are responsible to not enlighten the West about the real meaning of Taliban, jihad and others? Thank you.
A few sentences in Urdu and then I'll come to English. उसकी वजह बात ये है कि मुसलमान क्या किसी को अपना इंटरप्रिटेशन बताएं कि जब आपके किरदार से वो जाहिर ना होता हो। आप क्या किसी को किताब में बताएं कि इसमें हम मजहबी हम आहंगी है, इसमें सब लोगों ने इकट्ठा रहना है, जब आपका किरदार उसका बिल्कुल ऑपोजिट हो, वो अगले कहेंगे आप हिपोक्रेट हैं, वो आपको कहते हैं हिपोक्रेट। तो आपकी बुनियादी तौर पे मैं बात समझ रहा हूँ, लेकिन मेरा असल ख्याल ये है कि अंदर इतना खलफशार है, अंदर किसी की जुर्रत नहीं है बात कहने की, अंदर सामने सामने सब कुछ होता है, लोग चुप करके बैठे रहते हैं और उसके बाद फिर जो है ये तमाशा सामने आता है जो आ चुका है और उस पे पर्दा डालते रहते हैं, ये मसला है। सो द आर्गुमेंट ऑफ कोर्स इज देयर are these versions or interpretations and reflection of religion. And of course in addition to what I just said in Urdu, by the way, I'm not giving an opposite of what I said, it's just an addition of different aspect. This is but one part of the larger long Islamic history. And it has to be seen in terms of phases in a broader sense. In that phase, hopefully this will turn out to be a short phase. Even Pakistan, when people are really in this, my visit, if I may take this opportunity to mention, in my last 7 days, and I come to Pakistan every 3-4 months, I'm seeing a lot of disenchantment, frustration among the young people. And I tell them, look, Pakistan is under a debt of $150 billion. I live in a city where there are 20 businessmen, business companies which have this much budget. $150 billion can happen very quickly if the right policy decisions are taken. There's nothing to be disappointed and lose hope. It's the small phase which will get over. Then once the peace returns, we can explain, okay, this is how peace is built. We got stuck because of colonialism. I think colonialism has a huge role to play, what one of our daughters had said. Other than colonialism, the Afghan jihad was a global project. The Saudis were in it, Americans, I speak as an American, all of this had happened. But now, I think the religious tradition, actually of Sindh, and I'm not saying it because of your gap, yesterday somebody was telling me about the rich mystic tradition, which is the only way to bring people together. But you'll be able to do it when you'll find a little breathing space. Pakistan has no breathing space. If there's breathing space, the rich traditions of mysticism, of togetherness, is going to prove that we can defeat the idea of Taliban. Then we'll say to the world, look, this is how to do it right.
I think we should wind up. I'm going to ask you if you would like to say something about the fate of the Hazara community which the Taliban decimated as much as they could during their first stint in power.
I'm so glad when you asked it, because it would have been very unfair if we had not talked about Hazara and other minorities, but especially Hazara. I highly encourage, especially the young people in the room, to read the history of Hazara. They have faced tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Just because they look different, and this is answer to our esteemed scholar previously as well. Everyone knew they are Muslim, even if they've, let's say they have come from Mongolia or China, but because they were different, it was easy to target them. Because they were not seen as part of the Pashtun world, they were seen as those who had sided with the outsiders, and that's a message. Whenever you want to destroy someone, you start declaring them enemy of the state, traitors, representing another community. And that's what Hazara faced for the longest. They have been brutalized. They were not given their due rights. Now they are slightly, might be better because of the Afghan time when the Afghan Republic happened. They had more educational opportunities, more quota. But Hazaras in Afghanistan and Hazaras in Pakistan. Every major terrorist attack in the last many years or 2 decades that happened in Pakistan's Quetta was in most cases targeting Hazara. This is a study in itself. We think of genocide elsewhere, which is also true and accurate. I would say there's a genocide of Hazara that's taking place in front of the eyes of this region, and people have closed their eyes to it. It's worth taking up that cause.
And you know, they are such a cultured community. They are so educated, they are so cultured. And I remember once when I was in Quetta, there was interacting with some young women over there, and they were so scared. All they wanted to do was to go away from there. And they said, is there no way that one young woman said, is there no way that you can help me to leave this place? Because they are threatened they live in a kind of ghetto. It is a ghetto in which they live in Quetta. And during their first stint in power, the Taliban really massacred them in Bamiyan, if you remember. It is a very sad state of affairs. Thank you, Dr. Hassan Abbas, for this excellent presentation which you have made. And you have highlighted so many aspects of what I can only call the Taliban phenomenon. Because there is still, to somebody like me, so much mystery about it. So much which we don't understand. But in your talk, you have given a very positive view of the Taliban, which I don't know to what extent I share it, and I don't know to what extent other people share it. But the message I got from you was that they are learning the ways of the world. You have described it as an indigenous social movement, but you have also talked about how they have learned. You have spoken about their pragmatism. You have told us that they have acquired negotiating skills. You have told us that they now have great organizational skills. And you have also talked about the way they are learning to govern, which is not easy in a country which has been fractured by violence for such a long time. And they are learning to govern. And you have also indicated, that is the way I see it, their hypocrisy about the rights of women in their country. You have also pointed out the dichotomy between the private and public lives of many of the Taliban leaders, which was something new for me. So this has given us a completely different perception of the Taliban, which is positive. I think everybody who is dealing with public policy with respect to the Taliban realizes that we have to engage with them, and we have to engage with them because they are a reality. They are sitting over there. They are in power in Afghanistan. So we can't just pretend that they are not there. However, in your book, you have said, the truth is that the Taliban are inherently a contradictory bunch of people. That is what you have said. Contradictory bunch of people muddled in complexity. However, you have also said positive things about them, and you have pointed out that it is our collective moral duty to each other and to humanity to protect each other from oppression and injustice. The world, more than anything else, owes this to the people of Afghanistan, and I am ending with your words on the unfortunate women. I can only call them unfortunate women in Afghanistan today. To the women deprived of basic dignity and respect, the little girls robbed of an education, and every child from whom a hopeful future has been stolen. Thank you very much, Professor Saab. And this is our journal. We have been publishing this journal since 1948 without a break. I hope you will contribute to it. And please come again. And there is tea served on the ground floor.